Welcome to episode 6 of Inner Noise. My name's Gabriella Jones and I'm a concert harpist based in London. I am currently sitting here bulk recording some January episodes, and I've just realised that I've recorded an episode and didn't introduce myself. So, does it matter? Probably not. Let's move on. We're now well into January 2025 at this point when the episode comes out, and I've been reflecting on the past year. So I spent probably the 31st of January to probably around the 6th or 7th just thinking about 2024, and what I wanted to do was talk in this episode about art and art I experienced and why it was important to me. So what I decided to do at the beginning of last year was do art and culture days. That's what I called them anyway. They started off being on a Tuesday and then they moved to a Saturday, and basically every week I set aside time to step away from work and immerse myself in art or culture or just experiences. And I think especially here in London it wasn't hard to find things to do, but I did it also wherever I found myself. As the year got busier, it became harder to stick to it consistently, but even with those challenges, the effort was so worth it, because sometimes I really had to drag myself out because I was thinking I actually would way prefer to be doing nothing than going anywhere, especially if I'd been working in the city and then having to go in to go and see the art. But it was always truly worth it. I think my hope for this episode is to inspire everyone to step out and experience more, whether it's art, exhibitions, or just walking in your city and soaking in its energy. I think that is one great thing about London. And sometimes you don't want to soak in the energy it provides, but sometimes it's great. So today I'm going to take you through my year chronologically, and I'm sharing the things I really enjoyed. By the way, this isn't just what I saw or experienced, this is just the good bits, and sharing what I saw, where I went, why it mattered to me. And I don't mean any of this in a pretentious way, it's just honesty and some thoughts and some really good art. So let's start with January. 1st of January, I went to the Diva exhibition at the V&A. So nice that it's open on New Year's Day. I'll be honest, I didn't enjoy the exhibition so much. It was interesting, and it was a full exhibition as well. There was like a lot of stuff to see, but I paid for it and I like to get my money's worth. So I did try and, fill up my cup from the exhibition. So though it didn't deeply resonate with me, it did make me think about how we idolize figures in our culture. It's fascinating how the word diva can signify empowerment and creativity, but it can also carry a stigma of excess or entitlement. It's a bit of a funny word, I think. But I think that duality mirrors so much of what we celebrate and criticise in modern culture. I'm just leaving that rest. It's like whenever I've written out a lot of these episodes so I know what to talk about, and I'm not saying over and over again. And every time I read that sentence, I just think, gosh, I start thinking about it more and more. Anyway, the word diva actually comes from the Latin word for goddess. And it's a term created, I read this somewhere, so again, I'm not sure how factual this is, I don't know where my source was, but it's like an exceptional female opera singer in the 19th century, like that's when the word became prevalent. And I just think now it's varied with so many more kind of loaded connotations, and I think the evolution of the word is pretty significant as well. So there were a few quotes that stuck with me through the exhibition. I love quotes. I write them down, keep them in a book. One of them was by, who was this? Pierre-Jean Lovasse. my pronunciation of some of these artists and the art is going to be absolutely atrocious, so I do apologise for that. Once a virtuosa singer has been judged a diva, that is all that needs to be said. The diva becomes divine. And I just thought, gosh, isn't it true? Like, you know, sometimes women are described as divas and it's almost like they're a bit too sassy for their own good. There's like an arrogance there. But then I was thinking, you know, if you say it in this way, you know, someone for me who I think is such a diva, but like in this goddess ethereal sense, is Joyce DiDonato. And, you know, it is divine, isn't it? That's what I think when I think of her, is this divineness about her. But it just made me think about the power of perception and how identity can be really shaped by others' views. And then another striking quote then that's kind of in contrast to that, but kind of based on it as well, you know, it kind of aligns with it anyway, is one that was put up actually by Billie Eilish. And it says, or she said rather, is my value based only on your perception, or is your opinion of me not my responsibility? And I think at the time it really hit me hard. In fact, it did, because I wrote it down and I wrote that it did. And it's kind of a reminder to separate self-worth and separate that from external judgment. You know, what do you think? How do you navigate yourself? You know, it's just really, I don't know, I just found it really striking. Anyway, there were some really lovely old black and white films with some kind of, I think, diva-esque women and actresses. And it was just so nice and nostalgic in a way. That's kind of what I enjoyed about the exhibition. But to be honest, I did go around this exhibition pretty quickly, and compared to other ones that I'll talk about later on, and I remember that day so clearly. I really enjoyed my time at the V&A on the 1st of January. I think if anyone's having like a restful January or kind of a holiday, because you know we'll have Easter coming up and stuff like that, like something really nice is to go to the gallery on opening on those kind of bank holiday periods and just sit in like the V&A, or maybe the National Gallery is open on those days as well, I imagine, and it's just really great to sit in the art. Feels amazing. Anyway, moving on so I don't start rambling. In February I went to San Sebastián. It's in the north of Spain. It's just one of my most beloved places. When I first went, the food was exceptional, and I think it really became super popular, and sometimes there's a little bit hit or miss, but like the actual place for me is just so amazing, so amazing. I think for me, one thing I wanted to share when I'm talking about art and culture, because for me this is art because of the light, is that the shore and the sea line, the coastal kind of, you know, that kind of part of like environmental beauty and the natural beauty of like just what's around us is just absolute magic. And there's a beach there called Playa de La Concha, and it's just the way that the curve of the bay, and then the way that the two cliffs start coming together, no matter what the weather is, whether it's this beautiful crystal clear sunset, or whether there's been a storm, or whether it's super misty or super stormy, there's just so much magic as you look out into the ocean. And actually when I was there, which I'll play now, hang on, I recorded some of the sea when I was just stood there, because I'm just so obsessed with this place. Like, I couldn't put it into words. It's just somewhere that just means so much to me, and I just love it so much. Let me see if I can find it. Where was it? So it was in February. Let me see, is this it? Hang on. Anyway, February the 8th, 2024. So lovely. So I thought I'd share that. Okay, next thing. In March, I visited the Chanel exhibition, again at the V&A. There are many places that got a lot of money from me this year, but the V&A was probably my top hit. I think the craftsmanship and the legacy that Chanel built, and it just reminded me of like the impact of what we can create, what we create, and how it can last way beyond our time. And oh my gosh, there was just so many amazing pieces there. You know, her kind of her two-piece suits, which are obviously super famous. Her clothing, the level of detail, the level of quality. And I think, you know, I was thinking how timeless it is, and how Chanel, like the brand, has managed to sustain this longevity in terms of what the brand is. You know, it always feels luxury, it always feels really expensive, it always feels like it will last forever, and I think the items feel like timepieces. And it was just really wonderful. And I think the way that the exhibition was laid out was fantastic as well. Like they had this one room you walked into, and it was kind of 2 stories worth of all of the Chanel suits, and it was just beautiful. It was just so beautiful. And then later that month, actually, I was in New York for the New York Ballet audition. And when I was there, I decided to visit the Morgan Library on Madison Avenue, and the ceiling in the actual library, that alone was worth the trip. It was absolutely breathtaking, and I kind of assumed that the library would be a display of wealth, but it was anything but. It truly felt like this was a collection of many lifetimes, and something that was brought together with real appreciation and respect for all of the items that were there. And one artifact that I loved was this thing called a finger almanac. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. So it was this tiny little booklet, I guess. It wasn't really big enough to be a book in terms of the quantity of pages. But it's full of celestial and astrological details, aligning with the clock and the sun movements. And gosh, it just felt really magical and really significant somehow. And I can't explain how small it was. It was like maybe maximum 10 centimetres when it was unfolded. And I think people just used to keep it in their pockets back in the day to track the sun movements based on the kind of month and the calendar year. I'm not entirely sure. But it was really beautiful. And there was this real feeling of this obsession with astrology. And actually the ceiling was... And now I'm regretting not actually researching this before, because I wasn't planning on saying this, but the ceiling was, I believe, one of the JP Morgan's birth chart. So astrological kind of birth chart on the ceiling, which sounds a little bit self-indulgent. I mean, listen, it's his library, but I mean, it was just absolutely out of this world. It was so unbelievable. And I think that, you know, New York, a little bit like London, there's a lot of stuff to see and do, but I would advise anyone to go there because it was extraordinary. Anyway, moving on. I went to the National Portrait Gallery to see Francesca Woodman and Julia Margaret Cameron's exhibition, and what I think would be really helpful, so you can kind of understand what I'm talking about, is to just have a little look on Google while you're listening to this. Just type in Francesca Woodman house number 3, and the Angel series to see her photography. The exhibition just explored the idea of angels and otherworldly beings capable of moving between spiritual and earthly realms, and their photography styles capture beautifully this ethereal but kind of grounded feel. Just like, I don't know, I just felt like I was looking into a dream. I've been playing around myself actually with long exposure photography, and it's just such a complicated method and relies so much on light and that there's a lot of thought around it. So I really appreciate the photos based on knowing how they were created. Like, it really feels like something from another world, but also with the sense of it existing in, you know, the world as we know it, kind of thing. Super amazing. And when I was just gathering the titles of those two pieces that I really liked, because I took a picture of them on my phone but not a picture of what exactly the title of the works were called, I actually realised that Francesca Woodman actually died when she was 22, which, just, I don't know, made me feel all sorts of things when I was having to research into that. Very, very sad. Okay, moving on. In June, so I think I went to that photography exhibition in June, and then later in the month I went to Fragile Beauty at the V&A, and this was hands down the best exhibition I saw all year, and something that will stick with me for a lifetime. I hope I never forget that exhibition. And I think one of my biggest regrets is not buying the book from the exhibition. It's a collection that is owned by Sir Elton John and his husband David Furnish. The photographs were harrowing, beautiful, thought-provoking. There's themes of vulnerability and creativity. There's works by Nan Goldin and Robert Mapplethorpe. And there was hundreds upon hundreds of works, and it was incredible. Like, their appreciation for American photography and impactful art, and just the curation of it all was absolutely phenomenal. There were parts that were really disturbing, but I understand why those works were there. There was a lot of, I think, gay cultural items that were so impactful. There was a lot of political photography that again was just so impactful. A lot about American culture, but it was just absolutely brilliant. There was some photographs of Chet Baker and Marilyn Monroe, which were absolutely incredible. Francis Bacon, self-portrait photography of Francis Bacon. And I think ultimately what my takeaway of it was that fragility often inspires creativity. And in those delicate, fleeting moments that we find, you know, we find something really profound, and it's possible to do that. But it was absolutely jaw-dropping, and I'm almost sure that it's not on anymore. And I've just told everyone, you need to go to this exhibition, it's so incredible. It was, I think, if I could name kind of five things that I bought or spent money on in 2024 that was so worth it, that would have been one of it. I would have paid double, to be honest. And then in September I went to Yayoi Kusama's Every Day I Pray for Love at Victoria Miro Gallery in Shoreditch. I think most people were there for the Infinity Room, and I sadly shared mine with, I think, 4 toddlers and their parents that were definitely not doing what they should have been, which is not allowing them to touch the infinity room, but never mind. But I was actually really captivated by this other piece. It was called the Infinity Mirror, and basically you looked at a mirror on the ground that then reflected obviously yourself, but what you could see was what looked like a ladder climbing up into the sky. And then of course you saw the sky, and it was on like a really crisp Sunday morning, and it just felt like it was, I don't want to say the best of her, because I don't know all of her work really, really well, but it felt like something really special. And I really, really liked that. And what I will say actually is that whilst obviously the infinity rooms and that kind of art experience is obviously very Instagrammable, I will say that even for myself, like I find it so intense and overwhelming almost, but in like quite a nice way. It kind of takes over, does feel quite infinite when you're experiencing it. So I would actually go to something like that again, but I do find, I'll go on to talk about this in a second, but I do find it really hard, like being around people just kind of taking pictures for online social media purposes when I'm out, because I find it really distracting and like feels like really bad energy somehow. Anyway, October was my first time at the National Gallery, and actually embarrassingly I thought that the National Portrait Gallery was the same thing as the National Gallery. Like I thought, because they're kind of in the same building, it feels like that anyway. So that was a real revelation of 2024. There's actually two galleries in exactly the same place. What a time to be alive. Anyway, so I actually went because I had a ticket for the Van Gogh Poet and Lovers, and then there was some issue with my ticket, which I won't go into because that's not the point of the podcast, but I didn't end up going to it, and I just thought, I'll just walk around the gallery because this is free, and wow, it's not the National Portrait Gallery. So yeah, I had 3 works that I was obsessed with. One of them actually made it to my piece of art of 2024. So I'll start with that one actually. It's Claude Monet's Water Lilies Setting Sun, 1907. I just felt really speechless when I saw this. I'd argue that it's even more magical than Monet's more famous water lily painting. The sunset's warm hues reflected in the water just felt really dreamlike, and the lilies radiated this like purple and pink tone. It's just so beautiful. And you know what I did, because I loved it so much, was on one of my art and culture days I decided I'm going to recreate this myself, and I painted it, but it's much lighter. It doesn't have the darkness of Monet's, and it definitely obviously is not as good by any means. I'm not saying, but I just really wanted to have a go. It felt really good, I won't lie. One thing I'll say actually on that point is, when I haven't been able to find something to experience or go to, because there have been moments of that, I have to say, in London. Not that there's not been anything on, it's just not really sparked this want from me to go and see it. Is I've been painting, and I love it. I absolutely love painting. I have no skill or training, but I just love it. Anyway, okay, are we ready for some really bad pronunciation? The next one that I loved was Ferdinand Hodler's The Kien Valley with the Blümlisalp Massif. Is that Dutch? I don't know. Oh gosh, 1902. This is why I'm not a linguist. It's really, you spell it just so you can have a little look. So Hodler is Hodler, and then the Kien Valley is and then Kien, then Valley. 1902. Just have a look at it. But basically the vibrant yellow in this painting just really struck a chord with me. It just reminded me of like car journeys and train journeys in the UK. When you go past those really bright yellow fields, I think it's oilseed growing, just felt like home. It felt like a lot of nostalgia wrapped up in one painting. Just felt really good, and I've just really I can still see and remember it now. It just feels good even thinking about it. And then last one that I saw was Camille Pizarro's The Boulevard Montmartre at night. See, what do you do? What do you do when you're British? Do you say Montmartre, or do you try? Do you try with your best French accent to say it? Anyway, at 1890, it was done in 1897. I think the brush strokes in this painting are like really perfect. Me commenting on these like amazing artists' way of painting, knowing nothing. It's like the way that the light is captured at night. So whether it's from like the street lamps or the shop windows or the restaurants, it just felt really alive. It felt like, it didn't look like a photograph, but it felt like it could have been. And I remember reading actually that he, but it's Camille. Hang on. Pizarro, I don't know, male or female? I thought Camille was a woman's name. Maybe it's both. Anyway, who knows? But who knows? Pizarro, he or she, redid this painting many times actually, and it just feels like a masterclass in how like light can just totally transform a scene. So yeah, that was striking. Anyway, then in November I went to Copenhagen, which you can watch on my YouTube channel, my Scandi Diaries. That's what that one was, and I think that's at like nearly 600 views now on YouTube, which is amazing. And I went to a bucket list place, again, bad pronunciation, Grundtvigs Church in Copenhagen. The church is an architectural marvel. It's towering. It's got this ribbed facade resembling like giant pipe organs. That's what I thought of anyway. And then inside it's like filled with light filtering through these like really, really narrow vertical windows, and there's just this softness inside this like super epic church, you know. There's no darkness there. It's real light. Like even the shadows just feel so soft. It just feels like it just belongs in another realm. I remember, and I will never forget walking in, and I remember saying to myself, like, never forget this moment of walking in that church, because also it's not in central Copenhagen. You have to really travel out. It's in this super residential area, so it wasn't busy, and it was just unbelievable, like absolutely unbelievable. Like the pictures do it justice in that it does look like that, but like to actually experience that was just incredible, and I'm so glad I did it. And then in December I went to encounters at the Royal Ballet. So it was 4 ballets at the Royal Opera House, but for me the most standout performance was The Statement by Crystal Pite. It was choreographed to spoken word, and the dancers' movements were like really angular, kind of restrained in some way. It just added this sense of like inevitability to the narrative, and it just felt like they were like caught in maybe a cycle or something that they just like couldn't escape from. The narrative of the spoken word explored the shadowy depths of human nature and boardroom politics. That's what it says online. But there were reoccurring references to upstairs and downstairs in inverted commas. So I think for me it was like the upstairs was symbols of heaven and like morality and the aspirations we hold, but then downstairs reflected the tangible kind of human realities of like power dynamics, decision making, and like consequences. But of course, because they were in a boardroom, you're almost thinking of like one of these super big, you know, office buildings in like the city of London or something. And it was just brilliant. It was so brilliant, so powerful, like really, really unforgettable. I know I keep saying like this was brilliant, this was incredible, but I really have been spoiled this past year. Anyway, and then finally, on the 22nd of December, I went to Van Gogh Poets and Lovers at the National Gallery. It was unbelievably busy, and I found myself, sadly, viewing a lot of the art through the screens of other people's phones, but gosh, I think I might have to do a podcast episode on that in itself. I think I will admit I wasn't a huge fan of Van Gogh before I went, but the exhibition completely changed my perspective. One aspect that struck me was the inclusion of quotes from Van Gogh's letters, just scattered really thoughtfully throughout the gallery. They just offered an intimate glimpse into his thoughts and creative process, which made it feel more personal and somehow really alive. I was really captivated by his pencil and ink drawings, especially the black and white ones, which actually, when I researched them, one that I will speak about in a second, I realised that it was actually brown ink. It was red pencil and brown ink on some kind of paper. So it wasn't strictly black and white, but it looked that way, which is why I said that. And I think there's something really extraordinary about the way he was just conveying so much depth and light and texture without using any colour. And it just gave me this newfound appreciation for the complexity of working in monochrome. One quote that stood out that was like a reflection of his on his 1889 weeping tree, which was, "Today I've made one of those drawings which became very dark and melancholic for springtime." And this just struck a chord with me. It just reminded me of how art can be a reflection of our internal world, a way of painting our emotions and experiences into a canvas, regardless of what's happening around us. I think Van Gogh wasn't just depicting the tree, he was kind of encapsulating his own feelings of melancholy, creating something really personal and resonant. And maybe I felt that without even knowing the quote, upon just reflecting on seeing it, etc. Anyway, it was really, really, really beautiful, and it was a really nice way of finishing the year. And I think I would have enjoyed it more had it not been as busy. And I think that whilst it's incredible to see exhibitions sold out, I think sometimes the fact that it is sold out makes people want to go even when they feel like they're missing out, somewhat. And then it becomes even more busy, and I don't know, like some people, they were just taking pictures of the famous stuff, then wandering and scrolling their phones, and I don't know, it felt a bit weird. But I would love to do an episode on kind of phone usage around art and like social media and how that's kind of changing in my own little world. Anyway, closing thoughts. Here we go. 2024 was a year of exploration, reflection and connection through art and culture. I think there were so many moments that things that definitely don't speak and don't have words really spoke to me. And I think it just added a layer to my understanding of my own creativity. You can go to places and experience them for yourself, but sometimes art feels like a way of experiencing something through someone else's experience of it. Should I say that slowly again? Did that sentence make sense? I'm not sure. You can go to places and experience them for yourself, but art feels like a way of experiencing something through someone else's experience of it. Makes sense to me. My challenge, here we go. My challenge for you in 2025 is to go out, to see art, to go to a place, to just experience something and really just like immerse yourself in it and think about how it makes you feel. It doesn't have to be famous or grand. It's just like literally can be the way that the light hits your kitchen through the window. I think what really matters is just taking a moment to notice and appreciate it. That's my closing statement. So please join me on the next episode. I'm keeping this going in whatever shape or form I possibly can, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.